All right, let's see how we can create a decorator that we can apply to our classes. So I told you that a decorator is just a function that gets called by the JavaScript runtime. So let's define a function called component. And once again, note that here we are using Pascal naming convention. So the first letter of every word should be uppercase. Now, depending on where we're going to apply this decorator, the number and type of parameters varies. So if we're going to apply this on a class, here we should have a single parameter that represents our constructor function. We can call that anything, but it's better to call it constructor. What matters is the type. If the type is a function, the runtime assumes that we're going to apply this on a class. And this represents our constructor function, okay? Now in this function, we have a chance to modify or enhance our class. So we can add new properties and methods, we can change existing methods, we can even delete properties and methods. There are no limitations. So first, let's log something on the console and say component decorator called. Now here we can take our constructor and go to its prototype. Now if you're not familiar with prototypes, I've covered them in detail in the second part of my Ultimate JavaScript series. But practically speaking, every object in JavaScript has a prototype from which it inherits various properties and methods. So we can go to this prototype and add new properties and methods. Then all instances of profile component or any classes that has the component decorator will inherit those new properties and methods. Okay, so let's add a new property like unique ID and we set it to date.now. We can also add a method called insert in DOM. So let's say every component should have a method for inserting it in the DOM or document object model. So when we add a component in the DOM, then the browser is going to show that component to the user, okay? So here we define a function and simply log inserting the component in the DOM, okay? So now every instance of profile component is going to have these new members. Now we could also solve this problem using inheritance. So instead of defining a decorator, we could create a base class like component. Here we could define insert in DOM. And then we could have our profile component extend the base component class. This is another way to solve the same problem. But decorators are just another tool in our toolbox, okay? So let's revert this back and bring back our decorator, okay? Now let's run our program and see what we get. So let's compile and run index.js. All right, look, we got this message even though we didn't create any instances of the profile component. So whether we have 0 or 10 instances, this decorator is called once, and this is our chance to enhance or modify our classes. Now let's look at the generated JavaScript code. So in our project in the dist folder, let's look at index.js. So on the top, we have a function that is automatically generated for us. It's the decorate function, and this is where all the magic happens. So right after that, we have our component decorator. Next, we have our profile component. And finally, we have a call to the decorate function with our decorator and class as arguments. So this is how the runtime calls our component decorator to enhance our profile component.